Hey guys, today I'm back with another video and I thought it was about time that I do a recap on having locks. So I had locks for about 4.5 years. I first installed them myself using just 2-strand twist in March of 2020, and then I combed them out last year, so October 2024, so about 4.5 years of locks. And my experience had its highs and it definitely had its lows. But here are the main things that I wish I knew before I got locks. And don't get me wrong, I did my research, but I think my perception of what having locks was a little bit, or maybe a lot different than the actual reality of the situation. So number one, locks is not necessarily a lazy girl hairstyle. So I know a lot of people look at locks as, okay, this is the go-to lazy girl hairstyle. I don't have to comb my hair every day. Like, I can just be. And while this is true to some extent in that you can have locks and you can wake up in the morning and just, let your locks fall and be on your way, locks do still require, just like having permed hair or loose natural hair or even cornrowed hair, it still requires regular maintenance. You still have to see about hydrating your locks. You still have to see about getting your locks retwisted on a regular, because if your goal is to have healthy locks, you have to maintain them. That means making sure they're moisturized, making sure that you have a good retwist or retie schedule, making sure that you're washing them regularly, making sure that you're covering them and protecting them from damage. It is still a lot of work, albeit less work than maybe permed hair, but it is definitely, in my opinion, not exactly a lazy style. So that, I know I was in it was a wake-up call for me, because I thought I could just do whatever I wanted with locks, and it was the furthest thing from the truth. And a lot of times I would go places and I'd be like, oh, well, like, I didn't get my hair retwisted lately, and my style doesn't look the way it's supposed to look, or like my hair's really dry, or my my roots are matting together. There was so many things that came up that just did not make it a lazy girl hairstyle, in my opinion. When I talk about lock maintenance, for me, I got my locks during COVID. So I started them with 2-strand twists, and I watched videos on how to retwist my locks, and it's like, easy enough, it looks good. But there's an art to retwisting. So shout out to all the locticians out there, because there's a way to do it, and there's a way to do it correctly to protect the health of your hair. You retwist too tightly and you risk thinning out your hair. You don't retwist often enough, you risk your roots matting together. Anything with hair care, yes, you can DIY. There's some of us that are more capable than others, but having a professional that knows what they're doing and knows how to care for your hair with putting health first is so important. And getting locks during COVID, when salons were on lockdown and everything was a DIY, again, I did what I could and I did the best that I could under the circumstances, but it was an injustice to my hair. And I definitely did notice over time that my retwisting methods, I was thinning out my hair. I also noticed that my hair was prone to matting a lot at the roots, and for me, it meant consciously going through daily or every day and like separating my locks. And again, a lazy girl hairstyle, that does not make. The second thing, and I want you to hear me out and I want you to hear me well. The things that are bad for permed hair, the things that are bad for loose natural hair, those things are still bad even if you have locks. So let me say that again for those of you in the back. What is bad for permed hair, loose natural hair, cornrowed hair, braided hair, etc., is still bad for locks. So what that means is, because you have locks doesn't mean oh, well, I don't have to wear a bonnet at nighttime anymore. Or, you know what, I can color my hair as much or however I want. I could bleach my hair, I could do whatever to my hair and there's no consequence. That is incorrect. I kind of was of the opinion that because my hair was locked, you know, it's knotted together, that I didn't have to worry about certain downfalls of doing certain things, you know what I mean? So maybe like a month or two into starting my locks, I bleached my hair, I colored over it. I just went ham, and I learned the hard way that, you know, these things weren't good. I didn't do these things to my loose natural hair because I knew that damage would happen and I would have to see or suffer the consequences of that damage. Why did I think it would be any different with locks? I guess I thought the locks would camouflage the damage and I wouldn't have to deal with it in real time. But again, I was in for a massively rude awakening. I don't know if people realize this, but the same way that your permed hair, your loose natural hair, etc., the ends can break, this actually can happen to locks too. I know. This was something that I never ever saw come up in any of the videos or the conversations around locks when I was doing my research prior to getting my locks. But it was something that I noticed on my own hair. So like I said previously, I did bleach my locks. I did then color over my locks. Honestly, I did not take care of my locks because my perception of locks was it's matted hair. You can do whatever. It's not gonna break. It's not gonna fall off because like it's matted together. So like go ham. And what I did realize after I bleached my locks was that the ends of my locks actually started to thin out and they were like literally starting to hang on by a thread. And I would, you know, clip that piece off and it would happen again. And my locks were like gradually getting like shorter and a little bit shorter. And I realized like, oh my God, like my hair is breaking off. What? Like the ends of locks can break? What? Like what? I just didn't know this. And this is when I really realized that I had done an injustice to my locks. Like I did not take care of my hair. My perception of having locks was so incorrect, and like it was what eventually made me not have locks anymore, because I was just like, my hair is in such bad shape that I just have to get rid of these. And true to fact, what I did when I combed out my locks was I knew my hair was so damaged from bleaching it, and I had stopped bleaching it maybe like 2 years into having locks. Actually, I only bleached it once. So I only bleached it once, and that was in the beginning, and it had grown out pretty substantially over the years. So what I did was I cut the length of my locks. I basically cut the ends off. So when I measured, I cut about 8 inches off, and that left me with 8 inches remaining that I combed out. Now, what made me cut those 8 inches off is because the first lock that I attempted to comb out, when I started putting the comb to it, the bleached ends, it was like my hair was disintegrating. Literally, like once the comb went through it, the hair just like, it fell apart. And I was like, I am not wasting time combing out hair that's just literally gonna fall off. So I cut the bleached end off and I combed out the rest of my hair. And yeah, it was just my realization that because your hair is matted doesn't mean it's a free-for-all and you can mistreat it. Any hairstyle that you do, locks included, you have to treat your hair with care if you want to have healthy, luscious hair. The next thing that I would say is that I knew locks could get lint and like product could build up in your locks. I just didn't realize how easy it was and like how on top of it you have to be. Like something as simple as wearing a sweater like this, you know, and having your locks down, lint from the sweater gets into your locks. I kid you not. Laying on your couch, laying on your bed, wearing certain clothing, resting your head this way, wearing a hat, wearing a beanie, things like that. Lint gets into your hair, and if you're not consciously like paying attention to that, picking it out, brushing it out, it builds up really fast, and like 2 years down the line, you're like, oh my God, my hair has so much buildup. On top of that, you have to be so conscious of the products you use to avoid buildup. So like for me, I tried to use, like when I was doing like shampoos and stuff like that, use things that were like, I don't want, I found like really cool like water, like micellar based clarifying shampoos, and trying not to use things that were too creamy that you couldn't wash out easily. And it was a task because some products for lock hair was creamy, and then like you find yourself like it being really hard to wash these products out, and then the products build up into your locks, and then instead of your locks looking nice and like bright and fluffy and like well cared for, they look dingy and like the color is off because there's product built up. And you really have to make a conscious effort to clarify and detox and just clean out your locks. And for a lot of people, including myself included, it's a lot of effort. And again, it strays away from that lazy girl hair care or hairstyle that people perceive locks to be. And then I think one of the final points, and it's like a 2-for-1. I did not know you could comb out locks. And I know that's funny to say considering I did comb out my locks, but like my childhood growing up in the Caribbean, I grew up on the island of St. Kitts, locks were something Rastas wore, right? And it's a weird thing because in Caribbean culture, a lot of people would look down on Rastas as kind of like an outcast of society. I don't personally look at them that way, but that's just a cultural fact at the time. Things have evolved, people change. I won't get too deep into that. So as a byproduct of that mindset, people saw locks as a bad thing. Locks were dirty. It was associated with not being an upstanding character in society. I had always wanted locks, even from when I was a teenager, but my mom was like, no way, not in my house, not happening. So when I was finally an adult and I had thought about it, researched it, I was like, I'm finally gonna get my locks. But along all these years, the decades, I just always understood that if you had locks, the only way to get rid of them was to shave your head, to cut them all off. And that's why it took me so long to try locks out, because I was just like, well, this is permanent. I gotta be really sure that this is what I want to do, because if I change my mind, I don't like it, it doesn't work out, I have to cut all my hair off. Then comes YouTube. I'm browsing one day and people are talking about combing out their locks. And I see all these videos where people combed out their locks and were able to retain a great amount of their length. And I was like, what? So as I was looking at my damaged locks, I was like, wow, who knew? I can cut off what's damaged and try to salvage what's left of my hair. And you know what? Potentially start again in the future if I saw fit, but go back to my loose natural roots. So yeah, I did not know you could comb out locks, but I wish I knew it before I had gotten locks, because then when I had made missteps in my lock journey, I think I would have been more open to just combing it out and starting over again. For instance, I started my locks myself, and that was probably a really bad choice. No knock to those of you who started your locks yourself, but like my grid was messed up, and I know a lot of people, locks isn't about perfection, and that's okay. And I agree, it's not about perfection. For me, the reason I didn't like my grid not being perfect, it was because my locks did not fall in the right way. And I had thin locks, bigger locks, it was confusion. So what I would have done is I would have combed out the back and kind of fixed that up. And there's other instances where like I felt like something was off or I made a mistake, and I would have combed them out and rectified that a lot earlier. So I do wish I knew that beforehand. Another thing about locks. So with combing out your locks, what I wish I knew, I used like regular combs, like rat tail comb, used the rat tail and then the fine teeth to kind of comb out my locks. I went through so many combs, guys. So many combs. Like I went through a whole pack of combs because the teeth would keep breaking off. They would like separate, like it was confusion. It was bad. And then after the fact, I saw somebody in a YouTube video, I can't remember who the creator was, but they used a lice comb. So lice combs are like fine teeth combs, but the teeth are metal and you can really get in there. And I was like, oh my gosh, that would have been perfect for combing out my locks because you'd have that fine teeth to really get in there and separate the matted hair, but also the teeth wouldn't break as easily, or if I don't even know if they would break because the teeth are metal. So that's a pro tip for anybody who's thinking about combing out your locks. Consider using a lice comb. So, you know, these are things that I wish I knew before I got locks. I think if I knew all of these things before getting locks, I would have had a different journey. And I probably would still have my locks right now. They would have been healthy. They would be luscious. They'd be nice and soft. Unfortunately for me, it was trial and error. And I ended up with really dry, damaged locks. And who knows, maybe one day in the future, I'll take a stab at it again. I think locks are beautiful. Every day I see so many of you beautiful Black women online with your luscious locks, and I look at them with envy because that was not the experience I had, but I think they're so beautiful. And maybe one day I'll try it again. But until then, I will admire your beautiful locks from a distance. And for those of you considering, heed what I have mentioned in this video, and I wish you the best on your lock journey because locks are beautiful. Thanks for tuning in, guys.